This is a video lesson for lesson 30. The lesson 30 learning target is I can solve division problems with a 0 in the dividend or with a 0 in the quotient. So let's look at a couple problems that we might run into today. Just think of a few examples here. So if we had a 0 in the dividend, we might look at a problem like 708 divided by 4, because we would have a 0 in the dividend, or we might be dividing some number divided by some other number. And what do we do when we have like a 0 in the quotient, or the answer to the division problem? So we're going to be looking at a few examples, working through them, and seeing what happens when we have a 0 come up in our division problems. So let's go ahead and hop into the first example here. I'm going to slide over. The first problem we're going to be looking at here is 804 divided by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up and write it as standard algorithm, 804 divided by 4. So I'm going to continue to go through my same steps that I've been going through before when I'm doing the standard algorithm. I'm going to divide, then multiply, subtract, bring down. I'm going to start with my highest place value here, which is the 8 in the hundreds place. So I'm starting with my division. I ask myself, what is 8 divided by 4, or how many groups of 4 fit into 8? So I do my divisions. Say that's 2. It goes right above the 8. Then I multiply 2 times 4, and that gives me 8. I've done my multiplication, so now I'm going to subtract. I get 0, and I bring down the next number, which is 0. So notice this 0 in the dividend here kind of poses a little bit of a problem. Well, how many groups of 4 can we make if we have 0 of something? So it might be tempting just to bring down the next number and work with that, but what we want to do here is we want to put the 0 placeholder in to show that if we have 0 tens, we can make 0 groups of 4. So 0 divided by 4 is actually 0. And so we go through the same steps. So we divide 0 by 4, which was 0. We multiply 0 times 4, which is also 0. Then we subtract 0 minus 0, which is 0. So it's kind of silly to go through those extra steps, but we got to make sure that 0 placeholder goes right here, or else our answer will be off. So now that we've gone through those steps with the 0, we're going to bring down the next number, which is 4. And so we ask ourselves, well, how many groups of 4 can we make if we have 4 ones? And we can make 1 group. 1 times 4 is 4. Subtract. We get 0. So since we have a 0 down here, that means we have a remainder of 0, so our quotient is just 201. And of course I want to check with multiplication here, so I'm going to do the standard algorithm. And I get 804, so these two match, so I know that I got the right answer of 201. So in this case, when we had the 0, in our dividend, we kind of had to act like it was a regular number and just go through the same steps we would normally if it was any other non-zero number. So that's with the 0 in the dividend. So not too complicated, but important to recognize that we still have to go through the steps of the standard algorithm, but just with the 0 as a placeholder. So let's zoom out here, and we're going to look at another example problem here. And right off the bat, I know that this problem has a 0 in the quotient. So we're going to see what happens when we have a 0 in the quotient and when we might include a 0 in the quotient. So I'm going to rewrite this in the standard algorithm form. Okay. And I'm going to remind myself of the steps I need to take when I am doing the standard algorithm. And I'm going to go through them, starting with my largest place value, the 4 in the thousands place. So I have 4 thousands. I ask myself, well, how many groups of 3 can I make if I have 4 thousands? And I can make 1 group. So 4 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract 4 minus 3, and that gives me 1. And I bring down the next number, 2. So now I have 12. So I'm starting my steps over again. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. Subtract 0. Bring down my next number, which is 1. So now I'm in the situation where I'm going to probably have to use a 0 in my quotient. And I know this because I have a 1 right here, and I ask myself, well, what is 1 divided by 3? And can't really figure that one out in my head, so then I ask myself another way, and I say, well, how many groups of 3 can I make if I only have 1? And so I can make 0 groups. So in that case, I need to put a 0 above the 1 because I can make 0 groups of 1. And then I continue on through my steps. So 1 divided by 3, well, I say that's 0. 0 times 3 is 0. And then 1 minus 0 is 1. And then I bring down the next number. I'm going to need to slide down a little bit here, which is 8. So now I have 18. So then I just continue on with my steps. So I say, well, what's 18 divided by 3? Or how many groups of 3 can I make if I have 18? And I can make 6 groups. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 minus 18 is 0. So you can see that we have to put the 0 in our quotient when we run into a situation like this right here, where we have an amount that's not our last number in the problem, but we can't make the number of groups that we need to, and so we do need to put that 0 in our quotient and then continue on with the steps just like we would if it was not a 0. So hopefully that helps clear up any confusion we have when dealing with zeros with the standard algorithm for division. And so now you should be ready to solve any of the problems that you see in the problem set. But if you get stuck on any of them, you can always come back and watch this video and refresh your memory about what to do when you encounter zeros in the standard algorithm for division. Thanks for watching.